Welcome to another episode of Licensed RPGs, where I review games based on books, movies, TV shows, anime, and so much more. In today's episode, we'll be taking a look at Mordred's Castle, a game created using the RPG Maker VX Ace engine that is based on the legends surrounding King Arthur and the wizard Merlin, though you don't really need to understand anything about the legends in order to jump into this game. Story-wise, Mordred's Castle is rather simplistic. It revolves around King Arthur and several of his companions going on quests to rescue his fiancée Guinevere. Now, along the way, King Arthur finds out about Guinevere's little fling with Lancelot, but decides to push on and rescue her anyway. Of course, to make things more interesting, you'll end up recruiting Morgan Le Fay to your party, who is Arthur's ex. Though sadly, she doesn't bring much to the story in my opinion, beyond a few fiery snippets here and there about how she's a better girlfriend for Arthur. All in all, this game just doesn't have the most compelling story since it has very little dialogue, and what it does have doesn't really work to develop the playable characters beyond the scope of a legendary figure. In short, the game doesn't really feel like it has characters, so much as two-dimensional shapes meant to represent characters. Gameplay-wise, Mordred's Castle is a rather simplistic turn-based RPG, but it does have at least one thing that helps keep combat interesting. And this factor that helps keep combat interesting is the various cool items that you can find in this game. Many of these items grant your character special abilities like being able to choose multiple attack targets, earning extra attacks on a single target, lowering the cost of MP skills, or granting immunities to certain status effects. The various skill items also have abilities beyond those previously mentioned, and your selection for each of your characters can be the difference between success and failure in this game. Another factor to keep in mind for combat are TP skills. Though unlike the MP bar, the TP bar will start at a random point during combat and is filled as you land attacks or take damage. As the bar fills, you can access the potent special abilities, but these abilities are rarely a factor during random encounters, and only tend to come into play during boss fights, which makes them feel less interesting in my opinion. While the abilities they grant are undeniably powerful, their lack of utility makes them feel a little underwhelming. And the two final bright spots for this game is that you can save at any time and any place as long as you have access to the menu, and that there are several recruitable characters that can be found throughout the game who travel off the beaten path in order to explore the maze-like castle in its entirety. On the more mixed side of things, the game lacks any healing points. Instead, the player can access the shop at any time to buy healing items as long as you pick up the magical coupon from the merchant you come across in the first area of the game. On the plus side, this coupon means you can restock on healing and MP recovery items whenever you need to. On the downside, the random encounters in this game rarely give you money, so you usually have to sell the bulk of the stuff you pick up to the merchant in order to keep your characters healthy enough to fight. And if you combine this with the fact that the game is a maze, you'll often find yourself needing to grind in order to keep up with the enemies in case you make a wrong turn into a dangerous area. Though the biggest downside to this game, and the one that ruins it for me, is the final boss battle. You know how I brought up the ability to customize your characters through the careful selection of equipable items? Well, that doesn't apply to the final boss battle. The only method I found to taking down the final boss requires you to utilize specific pieces of equipment such as the Virgil Cloak to counter the fact that Mordred's attacks will always hit you and do defense-ignoring damage, while also inflicting negative status effects such as Petrify. In short, if you went through the trouble of maxing your physical and magical defense like I did, then congratulations, since you just wasted 5 to 10 hours of your life and managed to accomplish absolutely nothing for your efforts. Generally speaking, this game isn't anything special, to be honest, since it relies on the default character models and sprites of RPG Maker VX Ace. This isn't to say the game is ugly, but that it doesn't stand out like Stray Dogs or other games created using this system that have had original sprite work created for them. The only major downside in terms of graphics, in my opinion, is that many of the enemy sprites are recycled throughout the game and simply given a color swap in order to appear like a new enemy. Even so, this game does feature a large variety of enemies over the course of the game. Sound-wise, the game seems to have a rather limited number of tracks, or maybe it only seems that way since I spent over 16 hours on this game, and a lot of that time was spent grinding in one specific area, so I was subjected to the same background combat track repeatedly. So much so that I actually felt the need to go into the sound mixer on my computer and mute the volume of this game in order to listen to something else. Though to be fair, the songs aren't exactly bad, they just grow old after a while. But the only real messed up in the sound department is that this game doesn't offer any in-game volume controls. Mordred's Castle is a good attempt for a first-time RPG Maker game in my opinion, but it suffers from such a high level of difficulty in both the beginning and ending that many players will either give up at the start or quit in frustration at the end. And even if you manage to overcome the final hurdles and defeat the final boss, it doesn't feel rewarding since you can't take them down based on your own style of play, but instead have to rely on certain pieces of equipment in order to do it. As such, this game is mostly skippable in my opinion, since it also fails to do anything interesting with its narrative or immerse the player within the lore surrounding the legendary King Arthur and the wizard Merlin. In fact, I'd even go as far as to say the name of the game is meant to draw players in based on its association to King Arthur, rather than on the merits of the game itself.